Up at the crack of dawn, King's Cross Station by sunrise.
The next train to depart on platform 2 will be the 0908 Virgin Trains East Coast service to York, calling at Stevenage, Peterborough, Grantham, Newark Northgate, Retford, Doncaster and York. This train is formed of 9 coaches. Platform 2 for the 0908 Virgin Trains East Coast.
Ah, that's my train being announced. Time to take my seat. First class, of course, and why not? When purchased in advance, first class tickets can be cheaper than a standard fare on the day, and you get all the frills. Here comes breakfast, all included in the price, and I can look forward to dinner with wine on the way back. I have photographed York before. That can be an advantage if you don't want to waste time. Otherwise, conduct as much research as you can with maps and guidebooks before leaving home. I had 8 hours in the city, and whilst it was my plan to devote most time at the Minster, I visited Clifford's Tower first, a keep perched high on a mound. There are many steps just to the entrance, and many more if you want to view the metropolis from the wall walk. However, it was soon time to pop over to the Minster whilst it was still gloriously sunny, because the afternoon light will add a touch of magic to the interior. Going in November means less visitors. Furthermore, I was greeted with the pleasant surprise that the admission fee, which included photography, entitled me to make further visits during the next 12 months without further charge. With the EM1 Mark II, I tested the 12-100 f4 constant aperture zoom lens. Interestingly, the lens has its own image stabilizer, and when switched on, it works in tandem with the camera stabilizer, giving additional scope for hand holding at longer shutter speeds. Therefore, York Minster was the perfect locality for a test, especially as tripods are often discouraged or not permitted in large, busy churches. Furthermore, as I am testing the quality of a pro lens, I am not using filters or executing too much in Lightroom. I do not like having my hands tied from which I cannot backtrack. Furthermore, if I'm going to determine how good a lens is, I need to show it pure and simple with traditional photographic techniques. So, what are these traditional techniques? First, with the help of the electronic finder, I spot meter. I never trust ESP or anything auto over which I have no control. There is no point in buying a high-end camera if you are going to use auto. It is useful as a backup, but creative photography is a bit more than pointing a camera in the right direction and just pressing a button. When spot metering, the electronic finder shows variations and differences in exposure, particularly when the camera is moved, also changes made to white balance and exposure bias, for example. This is something that an optical viewfinder could never provide. Yes, we use them for years, but things move on. And like the Dustbuster, Olympus have been offering these technical advantages for years. A big problem with church interiors is contrast, especially on a sunny day. As yet, we have not produced a digital camera that is as good as the human eye and brain, but the real photographer, aided by the photographic eye, will avoid burnt-out highlights and underexposed shadows by knowing beforehand the differences between what is seen and what can be recorded. I have a couple of tricks to minimize this problem that I am happy to share with my subscribers. First, underexpose everything by 1/3, even 2/3 of a stop, on the basis that when it comes to post-production with a raw file, it is easier to correct underexposure than overexposure. Also, it will give colors a bit of oomph. With Lightroom, I am using the latest classic version. Its comprehensive set of adjustments offer considerable flexibility, even adjusting overexposure, and it will correct, to a degree, converging verticals and wonky pictures. Remember, whatever the photographer does in Lightroom can be undone, with options to save later to JPEG or TIFF. Another control that needs overriding is white balance. Auto white balance does some strange things, and whilst you can change your mind later in Lightroom, I set mine to daylight or cloudy as appropriate. One situation where auto white balance does help is for a mixture of light sources, daylight, tungsten and fluorescent, all in the same shot. But I usually end up tweaking the result in Lightroom. I might surprise my audience by admitting that I set the camera mode dial to program for church interiors. Like aperture priority, which might be the presumed setting, changes to white balance and exposure bias will still show in program. Because of low light, the camera would default to the widest aperture in program. Aperture priority to control depth of field can be used, but it is worth remembering that depth of field is greater at any aperture with micro four thirds technology than other cameras having larger sensors, a very big plus for the Olympus system. For quality, I stick to 200 or 400 ISO, and it is here that the 5-axis image stabilizers in both camera and lens really show their mettle. It is easier to take handheld photographs with a wide-angle optic, but as the magnification is increased towards telephoto, hand-holding becomes a challenge, and where purists would insist using a tripod. But I prefer to play devil's advocate and hand-hold with the telephoto end of the optic. The results are surprising, even amazing, with the 12-100 Pro lens. I am not a follower of photographic fashion. I use techniques that purists would frown upon. I have already been told that I am not a real photographer. Don't adopt my ideas carte blanche, but if there is a nugget of information that you like, then mold it into your style and be your own #1 and not a #2 of someone else. I enjoyed my day at York hugely, and before setting off home, I had a stroll by the Ooze for some nighttime shots. Not my forte, but just for fun. Virgin East Coast trains gave me a very pleasant meal on the way back, and the wine sent me to sleep. Fortunately, King's Cross is a terminus, but I could have gone back to Leeds.